So as trainers, this is quite a simple session. It's basically 3 pyramid shuttle runs with exercises. It's great for cardio, it's great for strength. But what you need to know is every single exercise. And as you go through the video, we'll have put up every exercise that you need in the top right-hand corner. Now, please write those down, make sure that you've got them. Because once this session is brilliant to run, very easy to run, but if you don't know the exercises, it starts to stall, doesn't work so well. Okay, so 1 element warm-up. We're looking for consistency and continuity through every session. So we're trying to get the same warm-up at every location, at every session. And this gives the members an opportunity to learn the warm-up, to do it each week, to get to know each other, and they get 5 or 10 minutes to talk to each other before we then move into the dynamic session. So the layout of the warm-up is 12 steps wide, 30 steps long, and every 5 steps I put down a cone. So then the actual warm-up, we do a very simple run, a dynamic stretch, and an isometric stretch. So we jog through the grid and then round the edge and back in at 50%. Then you go through a dynamic stretch. So for example, a side squat where you're going sideways, deep squat, a couple of steps, squat again. Then you come back in, and then we do a hamstring stretch, which is the isometric one. So just bouncing into a hamstring and maybe accelerating off. And then the other leg, and so on. Then we come back in. So you've done your run, you've done your dynamic stretch, you've done your isometric. When you get back in, we then go back into a run, but we build it from 50% sprint to a 60% sprint. Round the edge, jog gently in. When you get in, a new dynamic stretch. So this one could be facing sideways, twisting, bouncing. And then we come back in, a new isometric stretch. So this one might be a quad stretch followed by a small acceleration and then the other leg. Then you come back in, you go back into your run. So you're now 80%, so beg your pardon, 70% sprint. We need a dynamic exercise, so maybe a walking lunge with a stretch. So first off, just stretching the hips each side, and then maybe you go into a lunge with a twist, so lunging and rotating. And then further forward, you're going lunge and lift. Back in, another isometric exercise. So this time you might do, not entirely isometric, but maybe a high kick. So just stretching the hamstrings off and kicking back to get the hip flexors, and so on. Around the edge, back in, we're now into 80%. See, 80% sprint through, new dynamic stretch. This time maybe side squats the other way, or twisting the other way, or changing directions. Back in, new isometric exercise. So this is high knee over a hurdle, for example. A couple of steps other leg. So just trying, not necessarily isometric, but just taking it a bit more gently. Come back in, 90% sprint. Back in. This time another dynamic stretch. So this time maybe changing direction. So I'm explosive one way, explosive the other. Trying to really get the energy up for the group now. Trying to maybe push them so they can't talk quite so much. Back in, another isometric exercise. This one could be, again, actually we'll go back into a sprint. So build the sprint up to 100% sprints here, and then finish with the last rotational exercise, and so on. So you really need to get the whole body working, building in intensity, 3 or 4 sprints at the end. This whole warm-up should last about 12 minutes every single time. Then we come off, we circle the group up, we dynamic exercise, so just rotating the hips and the twisting the upper body, getting low. And as you're doing that, you then come up and ask everyone to go around their names, so shouting their names out, so even the new people get to know each other. And then we go into a very brief description of this week's session, and I'll be explaining each of those coming forward. So Borkett session is a base conditioning session, and it works both cardio, lactic, and even a bit of power. It is one of the original OE sessions. It's a fantastic leg session, and it's an upper body workout as well. And it's good for the core. So it's an all-rounder. It's going to be great for you guys today. Great, so this is base conditioning. This is session number 14. It's called pyramid leg set. What I'm going to do is ask the members to sprint as hard as they can to the first cone, back in, back out. So there's a shuttle run, there's a cardio element, there's a strength element, and there's a power element. Really gets the high intensity training working well.
So when you're ready, guys, first cone, back in, back out. Go. That's good. Back in, back out. When you get out, into squats, please. Just squats. Now I would get them doing 10, but I'm just going to get them doing 1. That's good. Then jog it back in. So this is their recovery. When they get in, they go into a power version of that squat. So squat jumps. And again, we would normally do 10 reps, but for this sake of this film, we're doing 1. Sprinting, second cone. Go. That's good. And then they sprint back in and back out. That's good. When they get out, we're going to go into lunges. So feet together, drop down, push back. You're demonstrating to the line. Again, we would do 10 reps, but for the sake of this one, we're just doing a couple. Jog it in. Now we do the power version of those lunges. So split jumps, one leg forward, one leg back, down and up, high as you can. Explosive. Great for eccentric loading on the legs. Onto your toes. Third cone, please, guys. Go. Let's get this one here. Let's get in hard. Good effort. Hand back out again. That's great. This time we're changing the leg exercises. Every exercise has to be a leg exercise. One leg is squats. Now we would do 6 or 5 on each leg, but this time we're going to do just 1 on each leg or 2 on each leg. Jog it in. That's good. When we get in, high hops. Bang. 1, 2. Again, 6 on each leg, but for this time we'll only do 1. I would demonstrate every exercise, but for the sake of these guys, what we're going to do is I'm just going to talk you through all the other exercises we go on to. So each time it's a shuttle. We've done one-legged squats here. Here we're going to do hamstrings, so one-legged deadlifts, drop down, back up, 6 on each leg, back in. You're going to do burpees off the back of that one. Longest cone, you're going to do a walking lunge all the way in. As a line, the whole group come in. There's no power exercise at the end of that one. Then they sprint back out, back in, back out. We do high up on the toes for the calf stretches. Back in, they go into ski jumps when they get back in. Then they sprint out, back in, back out. This exercise, split squat, one leg forward, one leg back, down and up 10, and then change over and down and up 10 more. Let's go back in, back in, and they do split jumps, and they're not changing the legs over this time. Then they go second cone, back in, back out, and they go back into squats. So this time we go really deep squats. Again, 10 reps, really deep, back in. They're going to do tuck jumps as their power version, tucking up and back. And then first cone, back in, back out, and we'll do full range squats, so right to the base and back up, 10 reps, and then we come back in, walk off and have a drink. Okay, so session number 16, rugby cardio-lactic set. This is I think one of the best sets that we have. You split the group into 2 lines. I tend to call them forwards and backs. So forwards are this line, or George's line, and backs are facing them, eyeballing them, beginning to strike up a bit of competitiveness. So George's line, the forwards, I'm going to shout a few instructions to him. So I either shout left or right, so he can run left or right, or I shout backwards, in which case he runs backwards. Sprint is the end of the warm-up grid, that's the 30-meter cone, and back in, hard as he can. Or push, in which case he drops low and pushes the partner back 2 cones. I'll also shout down, which is just getting down and back up. The whole idea with this is to get the intensity as high as you possibly can. So as fewer left, rights and backs as you can, lots of sprints, lots of pushes. I do 2 pushes, 2 sprints. So George, are you ready? Sprint. So here he's sprinting hard as he can to the end of the warm-up grid. It's good. Back in hard, Maisie. And you've got a whole line of people hopefully doing this. As soon as you get in, down, up, push. Hits the ground, pops up, pushes his partner back 2 cones. That's good. Back in fast, George. Danny's talking to him, telling him about turn and sprint, George, turn and sprint. So he sits really high intensity, hits the cardio, hits the lactic, testing him. Really good reflection of sports training, really good reflection of rugby training. Down, up, push, last push he's going to be doing. Down, up, hit and drive, George. Come on, working the legs hard as you can, back in fast. And as you can see, it's exhausting. At this point, we swap it over, get Danny to tap him on the back and tell him how well he's done, and swap it over, other person works. Okay, so this is cardio upper body shuttle run. We've just done the legs shuttle run, so this is just upper body version of that. You're doing exactly the same, sprinting first cone, back in, back out. When you get out, you do an upper body exercise. I always do press ups when you're going out and core exercises back here. So I'll just demonstrate a couple of sets. Okay, first cone, back in and back out again. When I get out, make sure the line's aligned, 10 press ups. Okay, we would do 10 and then back in, get them jogging in. This is their recovery. Into sit-ups, 10 reps of sit-ups. Back up as a line. Second cone, fast as you can. That's good. Back in, all the way back in and back out again. When they get out, new type of press up. So let's do close grip press up, 10 reps. When they pop up, back in, Russian twist, 10 reps. Back on their toes, sprinting, third cone. Back in, back out. So there's a real sprint set there. When they get out, new exercise, wide arm press ups. Back in, abdo bike, so lying on the back, opposite elbow, opposite knee. Up on your toes, fourth cone, sprinting, back in, back out. New upper body arm exercise. You could do high hand, low hand on the press up, so 5 like that, and then 5 like that. And then back in, new core exercise, straight legged leg lift, for example. You can make these up, go at your own pace. Then furthest cone, back in, back out, sprinting. When you get out, we're going to do press up and rotation, for example. Sprinting back in, we're going to do crunches, knees in the air, crunching up. We work all the way back in as well. So penultimate cone, sprinting, back in, back out. When you get out there, this time you're going to think of a new exercise, maybe close, elbows staying close to the body on the press up, so you're trying to get more triceps. Back in, new abdominal exercise, maybe dead bug or something like that. Back up as a line, third cone, back in, back out. New press up. So struggling slightly, thinking without any time, but you do a new exercise on each one, upper body exercise on each one, and if you look at the notes, I can send you some through across. So we've come to the end of the session. We're looking to do a cool down or a stretch. A cool down, you might want to do a reverse shuttle run, so you go 100% to the longest cone and then decrease in energy as you come down. Then we're at about 55 minutes of the session. We've got a 5-minute stretch. Frankly, it doesn't have to be that good. You can explain to the members while you're stretching that actually isometric stretches are best done when their muscles are cold. I tend to just do, particularly in the winter when the ground's wet and cold, I do a quick salutation to the sun, or slow salutation to the sun, with a few extra stretches pushed in. You can do any stretch you like, but it needn't be more than about 5 minutes. As I'm going through it, I'll go through it now, but as I'm going through it, I also talk to the members about events coming up and about various things that have been good about the session, that sort of thing. So I tend to ask them to legs wide, roll forward, forehead touches the grass. Obviously you can't get anywhere near the grass, especially if you're as inflexible as I am. Then hands hit the ground, feet go back, hips go high, chin goes low. Stretch that and hold that for longer than I'm going to do it, but not too long. Then hips go high, chin high. That's good. Then I go hips high again and just walk it back until I'm hanging again between the legs. And I look to go wide and stretching the adductor out. And if you can push them low on that one, even better. If they're struggling with this, on one knee, leg out to the side. Then I come into the middle and the other side. All the time I'm talking to them about events coming up, what's going on at training, who's done particularly well during the session. And maybe I'll do a glute stretch as well, so bring the knee across to one hand and just drop into a glute stretch. Then the other leg, and so on. After I've done both of those, I might look into an adductor stretch, so into a one kneeling side, push the hip forward, kneeling side, hand high, and rotate away from that back leg. And again, holding for 30 seconds or so. While I'm in this position, I might go into a hamstring stretch. So that's pretty much it. Maybe finishing with a quad stretch. And I always end the sessions with getting the members as a whole group to face the sun, put their hands on the back of the head, shut the eyes,
3 or 4 long, slow, mindful breaths, just trying to bring them back into the moment, trying to take the energy, the heart rate down a bit. And then we stop if we can get them to clap, and then head home. So hopefully it's feeling really positive at the end of the session.